In this season, we remember the followers. We remember the story of those ragtag rebels, the traditional country Jews resisting a new Greek regime determined to wipe out their Judean rituals and culture. They gathered around the Maccabee family in the hills and rained down such misery on Antiochus Epiphanes IV, who led the occupying forces in Jerusalem, that they won the city back. And while they were restoring their temple back to rights, they could only find enough oil to light their temple menorah for one night. But they were amazed to find, as the week wore on, those lights continued to burn. This season, we remember the followers, the story of kings and shepherds who followed a star to a humble manger and marveled at the magnificent mystery of the child. This is a season of followers, of warriors and wanderers bent to a single purpose. You may have noticed that I picked up the shamash candle first before I lit the other candles in our menorah. It's symbolic of a kind of a leader. And the leader is called the servant leader, just like the candle is called the servant candle. And a servant leader is someone who rises in stature by encouraging the light that others carry within themselves. A few years ago, actually here in the parlor where Susan is right now, we had a very lively conversation after a church service. And the conversation was about what makes a good leader. We talked about charismatic leaders and creative leaders and dominant leaders, and actually, as I said, servant leaders. And we discovered that, I think there were probably like 25 people in the room. We had 25 different opinions on what was good leadership. I find congregations to be fascinating and multicultural arenas for experiencing leadership and followership. Everyone has their own idea of what works and how they themselves fit into the scheme of things. And on top of all this, the congregation as a group is a live and social being. It's a group entity with its own history embedded in it like DNA. It's often one of the first tasks of a minister to kind of uncover the DNA of a congregation, to find out how it's traditionally responded to things over the years. And I've noticed that there's this incredible push and pull going on whenever a faith community wants to make a decision or go in a direction. There's this incredible energy unleashed when a faith community is deciding not whether something is to be done, but what should be done versus what can be done. And boy, when it comes down to how it's done, don't even get me started. But that emphasis on what should be done rather than what can be done is the core of faith, isn't it? It's the core of faith in action. If something is important enough for us, we find a way to do it. But getting to that point is messy. It's only human to yearn for a leader who will take all that responsibility away from us. A strong, capable leader with a vision and a determination, someone who has their own clear idea of what direction we should go in and how to convince everyone else to join together and get things done. Someone say like Judah Maccabee. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that the ritual around the menorah, the ritual around the shamash candle, has emerged as being symbolic of a different kind of leadership, a leader who ignites the light within us. I thought a lot after that conversation a few years ago. And I also started thinking about what makes a good follower. Now, I hope you had a chance to see a movie, 2012 movie that Spielberg made, and it was called Lincoln. I mention it because I think that President Lincoln, while he was definitely not perfect, was one of the more effective leaders that we've ever had in this country. The film was based in part on Doris Kearns Goodwin's book, Team of Rivals. And if you haven't read it yet, I really encourage you to do so. It came out in 2005, and it is a really good read. But one of the points that she raises is Lincoln's rise to the presidency was notable not just because he won the election, but also because of what he did afterwards. He appointed his three main rivals to the candidacy. And those were Edward Bates, Salmon P. Chase, and William Stewart. He appointed them to his cabinet. And in a 2006 interview, Kearns explained why. And she said, at the time, these were the strongest men in the country. And Lincoln declared that at a time of peril, the country needed to have the strongest men and that he couldn't deprive it of those talents. I know going into his first year of the presidency that he did not expect these rivals to kowtow to his directions. He was not looking for a table full of yes men, and they were men. He expected them to challenge him, to force him to re-examine his thinking about what should be done versus what could be done. And he became a better leader by convincing them rather than forcing them to agree on a course of action, because they were also participating in convincing him. The best kind of leader, we found out, is the leader who listens to and encourages and empowers followers. And if that's so, then I'd like to think about what makes the best kind of follower. Now, you remember, if a people want to survive, if a people want to move mountains, they cannot do it alone. We are stronger together. So what makes a strong follower? And I'll give you a hint. It's not someone who follows blindly and never questions the authority of the leader. In an interesting review of the subject, author Bob Wells explored the attributes of good followership. And he did this a little over 10 years ago, and I think it's even more relevant today than it was then. He makes the point that leadership and followership exist in a context, and that people act accordingly. So for example, in a congregation, you look around and you say, is there a struggle? Or is there clear and steadfast love? Does the community know what it is called to be? Because power in faith is adjustable. There are some times that call for strong leadership and sometimes that call for strong followership. In faith communities like ours, power is shared. So what makes a good follower in our situation? Maybe in any situation? A good follower recognizes their own power and expects and demands more of those who lead. And that more is based on the community's values of being effective and ethical. Every Lincoln needed a Mary Todd and a William Seward. A good follower does not want a hero. They want a leader who needs them. A follower is responsible for the community as much as the leader. A savior is well and good in principle, but to keep the message alive, every Jesus needs a Paul and a Mary Magdalene. And the farmers did not let the Maccabees enter the fray, but picked up their own cudgels. The soldiers did not leave the priests to clear the temple, but worked alongside them to clear the debris. The wise men and the shepherds did not return to their own lands holding the secret of the child's birth, but spread the story far and wide. A good follower understands the challenges of a leader and the community, but still, even knowing all these things, but still holds the leader accountable. A good follower knows that someday they will lead if it is important enough, and then step down when it is time. Why do I bring this up now? I think because it is the season of followers. But I also bring it up because we have seen a season of followers who do not expect ethics, who bear no responsibility, and who demand no accountability of themselves or of others. And their effect has a much greater impact on this country than any wayward leader. We will never forget the lessons that they have taught us, nor the labor that we must do to restore ourselves, all of us, to wholeness. Now is the winter season of followers who waited in silent company for their moment in time. Now is the season of followers who stepped into a great unknown with trust and courage and integrity. May we, in our turn, be better leaders, better followers, and better, brighter lights in the dark. May it be so.